I used to run freight out of North Carolina. Grain mostly. Light loads, smooth routes, nothing fancy. Back then I ran solo. Didn't trust anyone riding shotgun. Still don't. There was this one time. Early fall, crisp air, sun just setting. I was running west through a stretch of road I'd driven 100 times. No traffic. No towns. Just pine trees and old fence lines. I spotted something ahead on the shoulder. Thought maybe it was a deer that had been clipped and crawled off to die. But it wasn't. It was a car. Just sitting there, hazards off, door hanging open. I slowed down and crept past real slow. Nobody inside. Nobody around. Didn't make sense. I pulled over about 100 yards ahead. Put my flashers on. Sat there. Something told me not to get out. I grabbed my flashlight, rolled down the passenger window, and shined it back toward the car. That's when I saw movement. Not near the car. Behind it. In the ditch. Someone was crouched low just beyond the rear bumper, watching my truck. I couldn't see their face. But they weren't trying to be seen, and they weren't trying to ask for help either. Just watching. I watched back for maybe 30 seconds, then slowly put the truck in gear and drove off. I didn't call it in, didn't stop at the next station, didn't say a word about it for years. Because I still think, whatever that person wanted, it wasn't help. I've been trucking for a long time. Long enough that most faces at truck stops blur together. Long enough that most roads feel like home. But there's one memory that still haunts me every time I look in a rearview mirror. I was hauling eastbound through Kentucky, middle of the night trying to make up time. I'd gotten a call from dispatch that a load was running behind and if I could cover the route, there'd be a little extra in it for me. Easy choice. It was about 1 a.m. when I passed a broken down sedan on the shoulder. Hazards blinking. Driver's door cracked open. Someone was standing outside waving both arms. I had time to stop, but I didn't. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to deal with it. It was cold, I was tired. I told myself, it's probably nothing. Maybe they already called for help. Maybe someone else would stop. I even convinced myself it could be a setup. You hear stories, right? So I kept driving. Didn't slow down. Didn't even tap the brakes. Just stared straight ahead and let the miles bury the moment. 2 days later, I pulled into a rest stop in the same state. News was playing inside. The anchor was talking about a woman who had been stranded on the side of the highway for hours. Her phone was dead. Her battery had died in the cold. She'd been hit by another driver not long after sunrise. I'll never forget her face. It flashed on the TV for just a second. But it was her, the same one I saw waving in the dark. I know I didn't kill her, but I didn't help her either. That night changed how I drive, how I see people, how I sleep. Because no matter how many miles you cover, there are some things you can't outrun. I've been driving for almost 2 decades, long enough to see the country change, watch whole towns disappear off the map, and learn that the road doesn't just test your driving, it tests your character. This is something I've never told anyone. Back in 2014, I was hauling medical supplies out of Nevada, headed for Kansas City. Tight deadline, bad weather rolling in, and I hadn't had a proper night's sleep in maybe 3 days. You know how it is. You make decisions when you're exhausted that you wouldn't normally even consider. I was pushing it. Every mile felt like a gamble. My eyes were stinging and I kept zoning out. I should have pulled over. Then I passed a woman on the shoulder. She was waving, not frantically, just enough to catch attention. Long coat, suitcase, middle of nowhere. I didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Didn't even look in the mirror. I told myself it wasn't safe, that it could have been a setup. You hear about those things, truckers getting jumped. But the truth is, I was too tired, too focused on the delivery, too selfish to care. And I think about her more than I should. What if she really needed help? What if no one else came? I've seen a lot out here, accidents, heartbreak, even death. But nothing haunts me like that silent decision to just keep driving. That's my confession. Sometimes the hardest weight to carry in this job isn't the cargo. It's the stuff you never get to unload. I was hauling frozen goods through Tennessee about 8 years ago. Long stretch between stops, middle of summer, windows up, AC blasting, just me and the road humming under the wheels. Around mile marker 204, I saw a small car pulled off to the side. Hood up, hazards blinking. Normally, I don't stop. Too many setups out there, but something told me to pull over. Inside the car was a young woman and a baby, maybe 8 months old. She looked tired, beyond tired, like she hadn't slept in days. She was trying to call someone, but her phone had no signal. Turns out her radiator blew. She'd been there for over an hour in the heat. No shade, no help. Now, I'm not a mechanic, but I know enough to keep someone from frying their engine worse than it already is. I grabbed a jug of water from my truck, topped off her radiator, and told her to keep the cap off for a bit while it cooled. While we waited, I sat in the grass next to her. She told me her story. Left her hometown to get away from an abusive ex. Didn't have much except that car and the baby. She was driving to her sister's place 2 states away, hoping to start over. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. Just sat there holding her kid like the whole world was on her shoulders. I gave her cash. Not much. Maybe $80. Enough for gas, food, and a motel if she needed it. She tried to refuse, but I told her the truth. I'd blown more than that at truck stops on coffee and scratch-offs. When her car started again, she hugged me, tight, said, "You have no idea what this means." She pulled off, headed east, and I never saw her again. I don't tell that story much. Not because it's embarrassing, but because it reminded me of something I'd forgotten out there. Sometimes being a trucker ain't just about the miles. It's about being the right person, in the right place when it matters. I don't usually talk about this, but I used to fake mechanical breakdowns just to get a breather from dispatch. Back in the early 2000s, I was running reefer loads across the Midwest. Time-sensitive, high-pressure stuff. The kind of routes where you're expected to run through exhaustion and still make your drop early. Dispatch didn't care if you hadn't slept. They cared if the lettuce showed up cold. I started to burn out fast, so I came up with a trick. Anytime I felt myself slipping, I'd pull over to a rest area or truck stop, pop the hood, and call dispatch. I'd tell them I had an air leak or a voltage issue or the engine was overheating. Nothing too serious, just enough to buy me a few hours. Sometimes I'd even pour a little water on the side of the block so it steamed when a mechanic looked at it. Bought me time, gave me a nap. Saved my life more than once, honestly, and it worked. No one questioned a driver with engine trouble, especially not on those older Freightliners with 1,000,000 miles on them. I'd kick back in the bunk, shut my eyes for a couple hours, then fix it myself and call in like I was a hero for getting back on the road. It was selfish. I know that now. But I also know what it feels like to white-knuckle it through the middle of Nebraska, hallucinating road signs and praying you don't clip the ditch. I don't fake it anymore, but every time I pass a truck on the shoulder with its hood up, I wonder if the driver's underneath or just in the back trying to stay alive. I've been driving trucks for almost 18 years now. I've seen just about everything. But this is something I've never told anyone. Not my wife. Not other drivers. Not even my therapist. This happened back in 2013. I was on a solo overnight haul from Nevada to Wyoming. It was one of those runs that pays great, but puts you in the middle of nowhere for 10+ hours. Somewhere around midnight, I stopped at a rest area off US 287. No lights, no vending machines, just a couple parking spots and a single outhouse. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat there with the windows cracked. Clear night. Cold. Sky full of stars. That's when I heard a knock. Just one. Sharp. Driver's side door. I froze. There weren't any other trucks around. I hadn't passed a car in almost 45 minutes. I leaned over and peeked through the mirror. Nothing. Then came another knock. This time softer. Lower. Like fingertips on steel. I turned the key and flipped on the cab lights. Still nothing. I sat up for over an hour with a tire iron in my lap, waiting to see something, but it never came. When I finally built up the nerve to get out and check, there were fingerprints. Not full handprints, just 4 long smears right below my door handle. The weirdest part? They were on the inside of the glass. Cab was locked the whole time. I wiped them away, drove off, and never stopped at that rest area again. I don't know if it was someone messing with me or something else entirely, but every time I hear a knock on my truck now, I wait a few seconds before I look, just in case it's on the inside.